Speeding in the Mania. Speeding in the Mania. Hello, you're on the air. Hello, you're on the air. It's a 7-second delay joke. We don't even have one here. You're waiting patiently. We're being quiet. We're not giving you a 10-second countdown just yet. Speeding in the Mania. Can you make some sound? Blink
Hello,
once if. Hello, there
hello,
you are.
hi. So I'm also like a content creator in a way, but that's neither here nor there. It's just that
Cool.
just to get my view that I'm very in the community as well. Um,
That works.
so I think that the main problem that I have, there's two people here, so there's another person who wants to talk to you, who's more well
Okay.
versed but in this. But as for my side, my main question would be like, I think it's good that you work for Sega, not necessarily Nintendo, because their ninjas are real. Um, but I think my main thing was not necessarily, I don't think the circumcision joke was necessarily bad taste for a joke normally anywhere else. But I think it's not even just the circumstance at hand, talking about Israel or Palestine or anything like that. I just think that the minors are usually a lot of Sonic fans, minors, children, and to be making that joke not just so they can see it, but it could even be at one of them. And I think that's something that Sega wouldn't necessarily look at lightly if they think any way of Nintendo. I don't necessarily think it's the original post that would be their problem, like you say, but I think that one kind of lined out that way when there are minors and children heavily involved, especially if that could be pointed towards them, if one of those children or minors or the person who made the original comment, and then the response be to that to talk about genitalia. I don't think is something Sega would necessarily react well to. I just kind of
Okay.
wonder what your response would be
Valid
to that.
point, but I would counter that there is no obvious way to tell a person's age without
Yeah,
digging a little more
exactly.
deeply into
That's
people's
why I wouldn't
profiles.
just.
So,
Yeah,
and I will also point out that you're not supposed to be on Twitter until you're 13, at which point you should know what words are. But
still a minor.
valid
Yeah, you're
point.
still a minor.
I'll I'll counter it. Yes, still a minor, but even so, kids, for example, who sorry minors if you're listening, but if you're circumcised, you probably are already aware of what
Yeah,
that is. But
and
that
I
only
think like
applies
it's like
to a
okay
certain
to.
fragment of the
Yeah,
population.
it's just like I just think like Sega themselves would be like the ones to not want to look at it. But that's just kind of my thing. I just want to get out there because I was just kind of you know just
Yeah,
make that
and
kind of light. But this
if
is the
they
other
ask,
person. Yeah,
if they ask, I will justify it with the way I've justified it here. But sure, if it's two against one,
yeah,
let's hear number two. Number two in
gotcha.
our
And then this
playbook,
is
but number
the
one in our hearts.
other person.
Please.
Hi, his wife.
Hi.
So I think what he's trying to articulate here more so is that you have a very young fan base, and that's something that you're aware of. So I think he feels, and a lot of people feel, that it's probably just not an appropriate comment to make knowing that you have a young fan base. But all of that aside, I do see what you mean about stating that the initial comment isn't something that should be controversial, and overall, it
Mhm.
shouldn't. But considering that people have followed it up with asking about you to make statements on, let's say, the Palestinian hostages, which there are, as you know, or as many people know, many of, you replied to it by stating as if it's not something you really had to do because you're not a political activist, and that it's okay for you to make statements about the Jewish hostages because that's a humanitarian aspect. See, I don't see the difference between the Palestinian hostages and the Jewish hostages as humanitarian versus political, because political, this would be something more like legislation on taxes. Now, there's a lot of genocide going on and a lot of death occurring on the side of the Palestinians, and has been for a long time, even prior to October 7th, to be quite frank with you. It's just exploded and become much worse in recent times. So I think the issue here is that whenever you try to divert a little bit by stating that it's political, but in reality, that's a humanitarian crisis. These are lives that are being lost. This isn't a matter of opinion of colors. This is a matter of human life. This is humanitarian issues on both sides, not just the Jewish side. So I think that's where people are a little concerned by some of these comments. And I think another issue is just, for instance, when you said people would say free Palestine, you looked at it as anti Semitism. And that's really, there's nothing anti Semitic in that. There are Jewish professors standing with these pro Palestine protesters and students that feel that this is being misconstrued. And they are also standing with their students. And you could see that reported as recently as today. So I just don't really see why it's was an issue from the beginning not to just acknowledge that there were also Palestinian hostages, which I see you somewhat doing a little bit in this recent conversation, but I feel like and then you've made a lot of really distasteful jokes, like hostage jokes, to some of the people who have even spoke to you in this um, live chat. And just considering people are dying on both sides, and especially on the side of the Palestinians, I just feel that there's a lot of people that have distaste right now for what you've been saying. And I think it's pretty rationalized. And when people are asking you what you think Sega is going to feel about this, or the employers, or whoever it is that's in charge of this, you say, well, they'll look back to my initial comment. Well, aren't you concerned about what they're going to see as the follow ups about some of the statements you've made afterwards? Not necessarily just the initial comment?
They know me better than you do, with all due respect. They have dealt with me in person. They know that I'm generally snarky. They know that there is no evil intention behind it. They know that it's all in good humor. They know me. I have that going for me. That may not be a defense. That may not be any kind of insurance, but that's a fact. I work with these people. When I work with them, I work with them directly. I see them in person. You don't know me. You know the public persona that you see on Twitter. That is not
Oh, and
representative.
I agree with that. And I think that's great for you, but they also have a business to run, and this is highly controversial. And you do sort of represent them in some way by your statements. Aren't you concerned that they might
My
theoretically be a liability?
as my bio states, my opinions are my own. They do not represent those of any of the employers, and I'm a freelancer and I work with a lot of clients. They do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any of my clients. There's not enough room in a bio to say that, but that's what my opinions are my own means. Lots of people have that same statement. So
And
no,
you can say that, but when it comes down to it, you do somewhat represent them. There's a lot of companies that have some sort of backlash when their employees say things that might be controversial or inappropriate or offensive to an entire community that is facing genocide, to be honest with you. So I'm glad you feel comfortable with that, but I do see this as a problem, and I would personally be careful how you're stating things. I think he took us off. Oh, no. It says he's speaking, but I can't hear him anymore. Hmm. Well, for some reason, I can't hear you anymore. It seems like it shows that you're talking, so I guess we're going to go ahead and leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be a technical difficulty. For some reason, we can't hear him. I'm guessing it's what happened to a couple of the listeners.